Alpha.
Hi, my name's Marlon Du Toit. I'm a professional wildlife photographer, Sony Alpha ambassador, and also a professional safari guide. Now I'm here today to tell you about a camera system that completely changed my life and the way that I photographed. And this is none other than the Sony Alpha A9 Mark II. Now I was first introduced to Sony halfway through last year when I got to take some of the cameras with me to Brazil's Pantanal to photograph jaguars and many other different kinds of wildlife. It's a spectacular ecosystem and the best place to put into practice what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, I'm going to take some time to highlight a feature of this camera that completely blew me away. That is the autofocus system. Already be obvious to you, but I'm going to share with you today secrets, tips and tricks that I've been able to fine tune to make the most of my wildlife photography experience with this camera system. I'm going to take you into my viewfinder through footage captured with Anatomist, and I'm going to show you just how fast this camera reacts to different scenarios, and I'm going to show you how effective those autofocus points really are. So sit tight and enjoy this video feature with me as I share with you more one incredible piece of technology, and that is the Sony Alpha A9 Mark II. Now today we're going to be able to look at the following as we go along, and that is different scenarios. I'll take you through action and movement, which is an important part of wildlife photography and the whole photographic experience. I'll also showcase to you animal eye autofocus and how I found it to work the most effectively in different scenarios. We'll be talking about the speed of the focusing system, also the ability to track through obstructions, which is a very important aspect when it comes to wildlife photography. And then lastly, I'm going to touch on birds and how to photograph them most effectively. Now, these are important points. As wildlife photographers, I do believe that we want the very best system for our photography. We pay a lot of money to go on safaris, pay a lot of money to go on private safaris, and we want the most out of our camera, the best possible options to be able to capture that special photograph that we also dream of. It could be a cheetah in full flight running after a gazelle, it could be a leopard scaling down a tree, or it could be macaws flying across a sinkhole in the Pantanal. Whatever it is, this camera, I have no doubt, will be able to take you there and will be able to showcase this experience to you in unbelievable detail and quality. Now, in order to do so, I'm going to focus on two specific modes. One is called wide. Now, there's two options as wide with the wide autofocus system that I'll show to you. But for the most part, wide autofocus is fantastic, and we're going to touch on that one first, and then we're going to go into tracking flexible spot. Now, I'll explain more on these as we go along, and I've no doubt that you'll be able to get the hang of it and to be able to see the exact value that this is able to offer to you. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, firstly, I want to show you what I photographed here right at my house, which is a fantastic way to photograph and to make the most out of the time that you spend at home in between safaris, expeditions, and trips. I photographed my dogs, okay? Now don't laugh, because you'll be able to see just how effective this is. Imagine replacing my dogs with something like a leopard, or a lion, or a jaguar, or a polar bear, all right? It's the same system. It'll recognize the eyes, it'll recognize the features of a dog and the animal and take you into that frame and be able to get you the shot that you wish and dream for, effectively and effortlessly also. So have a look at the following footage that I'm going to share with you on just how I was able to get the most out of purely photographing my dogs at home. Now here, I'm selecting the correct autofocus mode, which is what I'll talk to you about a little bit later. And look at that, bang on the eyes immediately. No hesitation whatsoever. You can see there that it is not even wasting time, and look at how sharp that is. That is pin sharp, that is right on the eyes, exactly where I want and what I want. Now it's waiting for the dog to look. I'm not focusing at the moment. There it goes, right onto the eyes. Now again, I'm waiting for the dog's eyes. My crosshairs are right on the head where I want them, and there we go. Left and right, left and right. It's switching onto the eye that is closest to me. Look at that. Unbelievable. Now look at this dog. This is my lab running straight towards me, and those eyes are perfectly in focus. And when I take you closer, you can see there no mistakes made. And that is what you want out of a camera. Watch this. She's running straight towards me, bang on it, on the eyes, and no problem whatsoever. Now guys, that is what you want from a camera. Imagine this dog being a cheetah on the hunt running towards you. You will no doubt be able to get these kind of photographs. These shots were taken with a Sony 70-200 f2.8, and you can see how I pull back the focus to allow for composition purposes. And yet, even as I'm zooming out and the dog's coming towards me, there's two actions taking place right there. And even within that, I am able to get incredible footage. I'm able to get the detail I want. The eyes are sharp, okay? Now, I shot this at f2.8, right? So there's gonna be a lot of bokeh, but if I were to shoot at 7.1 f8, you'll even see more incredible results as there's a lot more sharpness. This was in low light, so I had to compensate for that as I was photographing running animals. But the point is, this camera works. What I've been able to discover inside the system is nothing short of incredible. So I'm now going to take you into real wildlife scenarios and show you in pictures and again some more Atomus footage on different wildlife just how effective this really is. Now this is a jaguar jumping across a channel. To give you a short story of how this came about, we were following her. She was walking along the bank. She was busy hunting. She was going after caiman, which is a type of alligator species found in South America, plentiful in the Pantanal, and probably the favorite prey source for jaguars in that area. Now she was preparing to jump across, and I had a little bit of time. Now we're going to explore the wide focus mode across a few frames to come here. And this is a great focus mode when you have a subject like this that's clean and free of any clutter. You have a clean background and a clean foreground. Those focal points will track onto that animal and not let go. Now the key frame was this one right here. This is where the cat is about to jump across the water, mid-air, flying. Unbelievable to see this kind of footage come through. And what you'll see is it is pin sharp, right? I'm sure you can see that. Very, very sharp, in detail, in focus, beautiful. Now that is what you want from your camera, guys. You do not want to be able to see a scene like this and not get it sharp and not get it in focus. That is the last thing that you want to do. As a wildlife photographer, we go out here and we expect to produce results that give us beautiful imagery. Now this shot on the wide focus mode allows you to do that. I had time, so I could go from wide or from tracking, switch to wide, prepare for the shot and get it done perfectly. Now what I'm going to show you, and the point of our conversation here is not that necessarily one is absolutely better than the other, but the A9II allows us to fine-tune the autofocus system to suit each different scene best. And that's what I was able to do with that Jaguar. Yes, tracking mode would have worked. I have no doubt about it. But in that scenario, what would have worked a few percent better for me and what would have absolutely guaranteed that I got the shot was the fact that I was able to shoot in wide mode. All those active focal points were tracking and working hard, keeping the Jaguar in focus. And even as it jumped, I didn't have to worry about keeping a crosshair or a point on the cat. The camera did that for me, and that is very, very special and something only found right now in this camera called the A9II. So when we look at this picture, this is another fantastic image that I really love, captured in South Luangwa in Zambia. Now, this is a hippo, and it was walking. It had a ton of oxpeckers on its back. Now, these oxpeckers are on the animal because it had an injury. It was in a fight, a territorial fight, and it was injured, and there was a lot of blood content, and these birds make a living off feeding off blood content. I saw the potential. I knew this hippo was walking to water. It would fall into the water and submerge itself, and with that, the birds would fly off. So immediately I'm thinking, hang on, here's an opportunity for the wide focus mode. So one click, switch onto wide focus mode, and guess what? When the hippo sunk down, I was able to fire, rapid fire, high frame rate on the A9II, and I was able to get this incredible result because of that. And much the same with this next photograph. It was a giraffe. It had a ton of oxpeckers on it. All it took was just waiting for the moment when they flew off. Usually, if one bird is disturbed and alarm calls, all the other birds will take off as well. This giraffe fortunately took off and ran, which made life a little bit easier for us. And with that, all the oxpeckers exploded off the giraffe. So I had a choice. I could shoot a little bit wider, be a bit further, but instead I grabbed my Sony 600 f4 and I was able to get in close. I didn't want the whole giraffe. For me, the story here was the birds taking off from the giraffe. wide focus mode. Every one of those birds were tracked at ridiculous, I don't know what fractions of a second this autofocus system tracks that, but it's many, it's fast. And I was able to track every single bird, and they're all in focus, all sharp and well looked after, and it gave me a beautiful photograph, one that I'm proud of and very, very happy to have taken. Absolutely. Now, again, in this photograph, this is a lion cub running across water, and I had time to plan this again. I was with them, and much the same as what you saw earlier with my dogs. The dogs were shot on tracking a flexible spot. Now I'm going to show you that in a little while, but I had time to switch to wide focus mode. Again, ensuring that as these lions run across the water, I was able to get the shot. I took a few on the 70-200 when mom was going across because she's quite big. But then when the cubs came across one by one, I got into the 600 wide focus mode, and all those focus points perfectly tracked this lion cub in glorious detail running across this channel. Now it was very effective. Yes, tracking focus mode would have also worked 100%. The flexible spot, I usually keep it on M or medium, which is a good size for wildlife. But in a scenario like this, especially when I'm not 100% sure that the eyes will be presented to me, okay, then I technically go for the wide focus mode. So I'm not saying this is exactly how the autofocus is set up to be. How I see it working is it identifies the animal. So this is all split second timing. The moment I press the autofocus button, it identifies the animal, say the lion cub, as a lion. It looks at the body, the shape, and it sees there's a cat or a lion. Then if the head is visible, it will go and migrate from the body of the animal to the head of the lion. So then it focuses on the head. Then if the eyes are present, it'll shoot onto the eyes and capture detail, and eye autofocus, which I'm going to introduce soon, will come into effect. So it first tends to recognize the body of the cat, then the head, and then the eyes. Now again, I'm not a Sony engineer, so I can't say that this is 100% how it works, but this is how I found it to work. 3 stages: body, head, eyes. Once the eyes goes away, it won't look across the whole body. If the head is still visible, I'll show you in footage to come on a cheetah. If the eyes disappear, it locks onto the head. All right, and that's the fantastic part of this thing. So even at a reasonable aperture, if your head is still sharp and the eyes just show, you're still going to get a pleasing photograph from the scene. So that is something to remember here, and very, very effective on this Sony system. Now, if you look at this photograph, very similar scene and situation to that leopard. Now, or to the lion cub that you just saw. Now, I would have typically been in tracking flexible spot M for this, okay, and which I was, but there was a scene, the leopard disappeared, and it was walking towards the road. It was crossing a road broadside from left to right. And what I did is I got myself and my guests ready, because it would be a split second. The light was beautiful, the sun was shining onto the road backlit, and I knew that this kind of shot was coming our way, where you get the dust coming off of the feet of the animal. All I had to do was prepare my guest for the shot. Now we had seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and the cat crossed from left to right. So no much time to waste around, to look for focus, to try and assign focus points, anything like that. I had a very short time period, but because of this incredible autofocus system on the Sony A9 Mark II, I was able to do this. I switched to wide focus mode, knowing as soon as that animal steps into the scene, the camera would recognize the animal and those autofocus points would go to work. And that's exactly what happened here. Split second after the animal entered the frame, my camera was tracking, shooting, and I was able to get this incredible image again with the Sony 600 f4, and it is sharp, it is in focus, incredible detail, and I have a sequence of 20, 30 or 40 photographs as the cat moved across my frame, thanks to the high frame rate of the Sony A9 Mark II, giving me a beautiful result. Now this next image is, it was captured in the Pantanal. There's some wild horses that roam the area, and as a part of my tour that I host there, I love visiting this ranch for these horses. Now, I'm gonna show you in footage to come how to select an individual animal if there's 2, 3 or more. So let's say a pride or 2 cheetahs or a herd of animals, how to use tracking flexible spot to select one. But in this frame, I did not have one single animal that I want to focus on. So I didn't want the camera to pick one. I just wanted all these horses in focus, and I chose an aperture with a great depth of field. I think it was around f8 or f9, because I wanted more focal area to be visible here to the viewer. And I switched to wide focus mode, and there is not a single moment where not a photograph is sharp, or an animal is not sharp. It is glorious the way that this camera tracks and the amount of detail in each shot. And also the tonal range of this camera is exceptional. It's not something that I'll touch on too much in this post, but there's going to be a few photos here where I'll show you just how well balanced the darks are and the whites. Incredible detail captured within this camera system in terms of tonal range. And you can see it here. These horses are pure white, but the white is controlled, the darks are beautiful, and it just results in a stunning frame, one that I love and I'm proud of. Now, this next shot, once again, I was with a jaguar, and this cat was busy swimming. I was on tracking flexible spot, okay? Which is very effective for this kind of photography where the cat is swimming, it's just its head protruding from the water and the eyes. That camera will recognize the eyes, it will be on the head, and it will not let go, and it allows you to compose throughout the frame, something I'll talk about a little bit later on. But know that absolutely this kind of image, the cat walked onto a piece of floating vegetation, and I was able to set myself up to get a beautiful shot. Now if you look at that, it is sharp, it is in focus, and it is well composed because I was in wide focus mode. So because of that, I was able to compose correctly, and when this jaguar shook its head like that, all I had to do is depress the shutter and get the shot. Wide tracking focus mode with the little square would have worked equally as well, but I knew what was coming. The cat had just climbed out of water, and they always shake once, twice, even 3 times. So a quick push of a button, thanks to the customizable features of this camera, allow me to go into wide focus mode and get this kind of photograph. Beautiful. I love it, and it's absolutely perfect. Now, I'm going to end this off just about before I get onto the flexible tracking spot with this image of an elephant. So it's not an action shot, but I just wanted to show you the versatility of this focus mode. I was able to lie flat down on my belly, extend my camera out ahead of me, tilt the screen back a little bit, and because of the wide focus mode, the closest animal was tracked, which is in this case the elephant bull standing looking at us. I was very close to them, but I didn't have to worry about focus. All I had to do is focus on my composition. I knew those focal points would be true and accurate, and true and behold, it did attract on the elephant standing in front of me. And thanks to that autofocus system and the fact that that tilt mirror helped for composition, I was able to get a beautiful photograph without having to fiddle with changing the focus points via joystick or anything like that. The camera did that for me, and I could trust it, which is the most important thing for me. It is invaluable, okay? And then this one here is a little bit of both before I get down into the next focus mode. You could have shot this in autofocus wide, you could have shot this in tracking flexible spot. Either would have worked, okay? Sometimes, I put this in here because sometimes we can't change, there's no time. Sometimes we just have to fire away and get the shot. And this image displays that you can do it in either or. This was done in tracking flexible spot, and I didn't have time to go to wide because this cat was walking along the beach and all of a sudden it just sprinted. Now, as long as you have a subject, I'm going to explain to you now how incredible this next focus mode is, but as long as your subject is clean and clear, wide will work just perfectly well. In this case, I probably would have enjoyed shooting on the wide focus mode as a tracked onto the cat, especially since everything is clean in the back and in the front. But the tracking flexible spot, as you're soon going to see, is highly effective and versatile, and what stays on my camera for 80% of my photography, maybe even more. So that is my preferred one, and I'm going to get into that within the next few slides. But I really hope this is making sense for you guys, and that you're seeing the full value of the autofocus system on this camera. I come from a DSLR background, and there is nothing, I'm not slating any camera band or any system, but I'm merely talking about something. I'm an experienced photographer, I'd like to think so. And for me, this camera changed the way that I photograph today. It really did. I find that my photography is easier. I find that I'm able to concentrate on other things. So it doesn't make it easier. Anybody can just do this. You still need to understand it. But once you do, I'm able to find that I can now photograph and concentrate on composition, something that's often gone out of the window when an action scene appears, because you're so focused on just keeping your autofocus point on the animal, and with that sacrifices composition, because you're not always controlling where in your frame the autofocus point is lying, okay? So you need to keep that autofocus point on the head of the animal. Whereas, as you saw with my dogs, doesn't matter where the head is in the frame, the autofocus point on this with animal eye autofocus is able to keep track of the eyes and give me a sharp, pleasing result. Doesn't matter where it is in the frame, it locks onto the eyes. So I can compose, I can worry about stuff like aperture and ISO, exposure compensation. I don't need to worry specifically about the autofocus points, which is a massive deal. If your photograph is out of focus, there's no point in even taking it, right? So the fact that this camera takes care of that for you is a game changer, and honestly a game changer. Now, look at this next shot. This is a leopard in Kabini coming down a tree. Now, if you've ever tried to photograph a leopard coming down a tree, it is at blistering pace, really difficult to do. Now, there's two ways to shoot this. You can pre-focus on the scene, pre-focus on the bark of the tree, because the leopard will be coming down much on the same focal plane as the bark of the tree, correct? Secondly, you can go into the flexible tracking mode and you can track the cat coming down the tree. Either or, it is equally as effective, okay? The tracking system on this that I used, I tracked the cat. This is shot on the 600 f4. This is almost full frame. Let me tell you, it was difficult. I didn't crop the feet and I didn't crop the tail. The picture's a little bit bigger than what you see in here. I just cropped it for the crop 10% of the frame. That's the only crop I've done on this. So I was able to capture this cat full frame coming down that tree in detail, sharp, using the tracking, flexible tracking spot on medium size. That is incredible. That photograph I love, and it's just there to show you just how effective the autofocus system is on this camera. Now, I'm gonna show you Atomos footage coming next, because with that introduction on how it works in this image, I want to show you how it works when you look through my viewfinder. So I'm going to invite you and literally take you into this camera through this viewfinder so you can see what it looks like, what my view is. And now you will be able to see just how fast these autofocus points react to a scenario, to a cheetah's eyes, to even a rhino, guys. I'm going to show you something incredible in the next scene, and I have no doubt that you're going to enjoy this. So watch this. Immediately, that autofocus point, the square, is on the eyes of the cheetah and doing a lot of work. Onto the second cheetah and right onto that eye. You can see I'm moving around. Now it changes to the closest eye. That's a customizable feature in the back of the camera. In the menu, you can choose for it to select different eyes. And again, yeah, without hesitation, as soon as I press autofocus, it jumps onto that cheetah, onto the eyes. It ignores the body, ignores the head, because the eyes are the visible feature. And look at that. That is splendid. I can compose, I can move my camera around without having to move the focus point, and that, guys, is game changing. Look at that quality. Look at that sharpness. That is next level. Again, smack bang on the eyes. It ignores every single part because those eyes are visible. Why not? You do not want anything else sharp. Now onto the head. And again, here you can see smack bang onto the eyes. Now let's look at a lion clip. These lions were photographed at night. I chose the scene because it's difficult lighting situations. It's dark, there's a spotlight, and even with the lion's eyes closed, even the side of the eye. Now this is not even me depressing the focus button. That's when you see that white frame, that's the camera auto-selecting the eye and telling me it knows where the eye is. When you see the green light up bottom left, that's me focusing right there. Now you can see the cat coming towards me, and it is focusing on those eyes with no problem whatsoever. Look at that. Now I stop. When it picks up its head again, when the eyes go away, you get all those focal points coming into action right there. And that is key because it stays on the head. When the eyes appear, it just focuses back onto the eye again. And yeah, you can see that no eye, but it still is focusing on the head. So if your aperture is correct, you will get a sharp image out of that. What about an animal like a rhino? Now this is revolutionary, I promise you. A rhino, I promise you, I don't even think Sony knew it autofocused on a rhino's eye. So there we go. Now a rhino's head is long. It is 1 meter long, guys. It is a big head, difficult to get the eye sharp. If you focus behind or in front of the eye, you could be out by as much as 15 or 20 centimeters with no effort at all. So the fact that I'm able to photograph something as diverse and difficult as a rhino is spectacular. That means this thing works on a wide array of subjects, more so than just cats and dogs. It recognizes that eye, and you can see as the rhino moves around and even looks towards me or walks away, it keeps track of that eye and gives me a sharp result. Now that is a performance that you cannot find in any other camera. Look at that. That head is tilted towards me and over 1 meter long. So the fact that that autofocus point picks the eye makes sure that my focus will be sharp and it will be true. Even there, even with the rhino facing away, it's still focusing right on the eye, exactly what I want. That is performance. Look at that. So now as it walked away, obviously lost the eye, but that is sharp, that is in focus, and it is in glorious detail. Look at that. Everything pin sharp. I'm zooming into even more than 100% and giving you an incredible field of view. Here again, a rhino to show you it's not just one scenario, peacefully grazing, me photographing. Out of all the detail in that image, it picks the eye and it holds it. Look at that, even as I move around. So that leaves me free to compose, and I know that my eye will be tracked, and I know that my eye will be sharp and in focus. So what more can you ask for? Guys, it works on lions, it works on leopards, it works on cheetahs. You saw that for yourself. It works on antelope. And as you're gonna see, it works on birds and even a couple of strange species that I'll include at the end. But this autofocus system truly works. And it takes the effort out of trying to move your focus point around onto the frame, onto the animal, which is what you would need to do on a traditional camera system in order to get the focus. But Sony is the only company that's been able to perfect animal eye autofocus to give you that kind of performance. And for me, that has been game changing. It's made photography fun again. With my previous DSLR, it was all predictable, right? I knew what to do, I knew what to expect, but this is changing the game for me. I'm able to now play around and in so doing still ensure that I get the best possible photograph, a kind of photograph that I wasn't able to get on any other camera system. And that is this. That's what this allows me to do. Now I'm going to take this even further, and I'm going to show you the next photograph is one of my favorite photos, and I promise you now it would not have been possible had it not been for this camera. I would not have, I mean, not that it wouldn't have been possible, but it made it easier to do. Now, let me tell you the story behind this. This is a jaguar. We were following this cat. It was in the water, it climbed out onto the bank, shook, and then it spotted some capybara, which is the largest rodent in the world. It was hungry, and as soon as it spotted them, it jumped down, it fell down onto the ground and started crawling. Leopard crawl or jaguar crawl. It was on its belly, on the ground, coming at us. Now, a couple of things to notice with this frame is the fact that I didn't have time. We couldn't see the capybara. We didn't know it was going to stall. It just literally within a split second dropped to the ground and started crawling. I just picked my camera up. I was shooting on a Sony 400 f2.8 with a 2x teleconverter. Now, I never shot with teleconverters, all right? It's something that I avoided. I'm not a big fan of a 2x teleconverter. 1.4 anytime. The 2x, it was iffy for me. With a Sony system, it doesn't lose autofocus performance. Now, this is important to note, guys. The autofocus performance will stay true, even with the 2x extender. And it is testament because I got that image that I just showed you. I was able to capture that photograph in detail with a 2x extender in difficult light. That was 11:30 in daytime. And the other thing to notice about that frame is the fact that this cat was wet. There was sun shining on it, and the cat was shining. There was a lot of white light coming off of it and a very dark background. But thanks to the incredible detail and also the ability to balance white and black, I was able to get everything sharp in focus, and the actual brightness levels were controlled. The dynamic range on this camera is excellent, and I was still able to get a sharp shot. And if you look at the next one, as this jaguar stalks towards me, look at that. How fast is that? The ability for the camera to lock onto those eyes like this is unprecedented. No other camera can do this. And yes, I could have probably got the shot on something else had my focal point been in exactly the right place, but I'm telling you, I did not have time. I had to drop my camera down and just shoot, and it got me the shot. A jaguar stalking at pace right towards me. You can see it's going fast. Look at the dust coming off of its legs. And it's able to do this. And I'm going to show you just how quickly this camera reacts. Partly because of the autofocus system on this camera, but also how the lenses were designed. The Sony 400, the 600, and a bunch of other lenses have linear motor technology in the lens, which instead of turning like a tubular technology in most lenses, this lens goes straight forward and back when it autofocuses. And in so doing, it's faster. It gets to the focus point much faster. It doesn't waste time. There's no delay. And if you look at this Animus footage of a cheetah, watch this. Bang onto the eye. No time wasted. So I take it out of focus and smack bang onto the eyes. Look at that speed and look at the focus, guys. This is very special, and that is what makes this camera so effective. Again, completely out of focus, onto the eye. So quick, so effective, out of focus, and watch this. I wait and right onto the eye. That is split second kind of focus systems. It's incredible to see that. And I practice and I did that in the Atomus to show you, but even every time I do that, I have a smile on my face, just knowing that should a scenario present to me like the Jaguar that you just saw, I know this camera is going to be so quick. It's going to identify the animal, the head, and onto the eyes within a split second and give me the shot that I want. It is very, very versatile, and I want you guys to remember that. Another tip and something to take into account is how you set the autofocus sensitivity on your camera. Now, it's a setting in your menu. I would recommend for most wildlife scenarios that you have it set to 2. Now this, if you set it to 5, the camera is very reactive. I'm going to explain it because I'm stepping into some photographs where there's obstructions in the way. If you have it on 5, the camera is very sensitive and it might bounce from your subject onto another piece of, like let's say the subject goes behind a tree, it might leave the subject immediately onto the tree, and once the subject comes out behind the tree, it might not be in focus. But if you have it set to a setting like 3 or 2 in autofocus sensitivity, you can be sure that your camera will not let go of the subject if the subject disappears behind some kind of obstruction for a second or 2. It holds onto the position where the subject was, doesn't let go, and when the subject reappears, it's still sharp and it's still being tracked. That's smart, that's clever. All right, so jumping on to our next image, which we'll be able to show you why this is such an effective tool, is this tiger. Now, this was photographed this year in Ranthambore, a tigress called Arrowhead. And she saw some deer behind us and came at pace. She was stalking, moving with intent. Now, even through all of these trees, I was able to track her because of animal eye autofocus, my tracking sensitivity set to 2, and I was able to keep lock on her eyes even past the trees. Even the tree that she's about to pass, the camera did not refocus on the tree itself. It stayed on her eyes, and until she re-emerged on the other side of the tree, she was still sharp, she was still in focus. I think I shot about 150 frames in this sequence, every one of them sharp. Do you understand that? Is that starting to register? Because this is special. Animal eye autofocus, the sensitivity of this autofocus system, this camera does that for you. It is incredible, guys. I cannot see me photographing any other system other than this because it allows me to get photographs previously not possible. Look at this next one. This is a hyena interacting with vultures in the Mara, and what my camera was able to do is select a hyena tracking spot onto the hyena itself, and all I had to do is keep the back button focusing, and the hyena was tracked in detail. The vultures ignored, and even as the hyena lunged at a vulture, the hyena was still the subject, it was still sharp, and it was still in focus. The same goes with this here. Now, this is a tricky photograph. This jackal was running from right to left, chasing a vulture, but in order to do so, it had to pass some vultures between me and the jackal. Now, traditionally, what would happen is my autofocus system would probably track onto the vultures, but I set my autofocus sensitivity to 2, so it kept hold of the jackal as it passed by the vultures. This is incredible. It did not let go, it did not focus. My jackal was tracked right from right to left, every frame sharp, and this is a fantastic example. If you're photographing anything, a bird with branches in the way, or a herd where you're trying to isolate one animal from the rest, as long as your initial focus point and tracking flexible spot focus mode if you assign that focus point, you hold it over the animal you want to have in focus, press the back button, it knows that that animal is the one you want. Even if another lion passes by, it won't focus on that. I'm going to show you how that works in a series of leopard photographs coming up not too long from now. But just know that once your understanding of this camera system increases and you get a better idea of how it works, this camera will give you images that you previously would not have been able to take. Maybe you could have, but it would not have been as easy and effective as this. I want consistency out of my camera, and that is exactly what this gives me. This is another scenario of a jaguar peeping past a tree. Now, again, it might not look that difficult, but what you don't see is all the vegetation between me and the jaguar. A lot of low-hanging vegetation coming into the frame. I was able to track through the vegetation, identify one eye, so not two eyes presented to me, now only one eye. My camera was able to identify the one eye and tracked it effectively and sharp and gave me the result that I want. That is what I'm after, guys. This shot, if both eyes had been present, it wouldn't have been the kind of photograph that it is. But here it is mysterious, it's stunning, and it gives that sense of mystery that a jaguar tends to exude. And I was able to get that and tell that story effectively because I used a camera that allows me to capture that kind of shot. Now that is what I'm talking about, right? I hope you're seeing this, and I hope you're starting to get the potential of what this camera can do if you just have a basic understanding of the focus system. Now, much the same in a shot like this. I've included this because it is a tricky photograph. What typically happens photographing at eye level is you tend to sometimes get the foreground in focus instead of the subject, even 1 meter or 2 in front of the foreground. I'm sure some of you have seen that. What the Sony A9 Mark II allows is for the eyes to be tracked. Now that is what counts, right? You want those eyes in focus, and because the eyes are presented here, it ignores the fore or the background. My lion, even though it's an even color and kind of similar color and tone and detail and texture as the fore and background, those eyes are presented. Eye autofocus catches the eye of the lion and keeps it sharp and keeps it in focus. Very, very special. The same here. This animal, a leopard in Kabini in India, was behind vegetation. Now this photograph, it makes it look a little bit deceiving, but if you look at its feet and where the vegetation is in front of it, you can see there's still vines and vegetation in front of the cat. Typically what would happen here is you could track on the animal, but there's a small chance that you could track on the vegetation in front of the cat. Now again, remember what I said, I'm looking for performance. If there's a 5% chance that I could get a better photograph in a scene like this, I want the camera that can give me the chance to do so. I don't want to take risks. And here, because the eyes are presented, the camera ignores everything else. It's set to animal eye autofocus. It looks for those eyes, tracks on the eyes, and gives me the shot that I want. And that is performance, again, as I've said, that no other camera can give you. And it just gives you consistency, it gives you peace of mind, and it makes sure that when you travel on these trips and when you go on expeditions that cost you money, time and effort, that you walk away with photographs that are the kind of photographs you imagined having. Far less mistakes and errors, and you keep a whole lot more photographs because the autofocus system just is that good. What about this? I included this because this hyena was unique in its eye. It had this very cool eye, I think a cataract or some kind of injury to the eye, but it looked eerie and spooky and exactly the way you kind of wanted a hyena to look. It tells a story. And the hyena didn't want to show us the eye. It just kept walking away from us. I was on the Sony 600 f4 and I had to try and get this shot going. I was set onto a focus mode, tracking flexible spot, focus mode onto the head. And what happened is the moment this hyena looked around at us, what you can guess what the camera did. It immediately recognized the eyes. So where before I would have had to point the focus point at the animal, not knowing whether the animal is going to look over its left shoulder, over the right shoulder, there was no way of telling that. I just hoped that it will look around or stop or give us a chance to get the shot. So it looked over the right shoulder and I didn't have to lose my composition. I could still keep the composition that I was after, which was the hyena on the left, space on the right, knowing the eyes are being tracked. Had I been on a different focal point, I would have had to move the focal point around in order to compose effectively, being at 600mm, and I would have lost the power and impact the shot had. But Animal light autofocus took care of that for me, and the Sony A9 once again delivered here and got me the shot that I was after. Now, what about this? Why include this photograph? Now, there's something important to note here. Look at the eyes of the leopard on the right. That is the male. He was displaying the most aggression here, and he was showing his teeth. He was showing anger in his eyes at this female trying to court him. Now, the female was intent on mating. He was not. And what I wanted to tell was the story of the aggressive male. The female wasn't snarling, so that wasn't my focus. All I had to do was choose the correct focus mode, which was tracking flexible spot, focus on the male leopard, and hold that back button down, hold my focus button down. And in so doing, the leopard would be sharp and in focus throughout the scene. Even in the next frame, and this is the important frame, as she was walking around, she was moving in front of him. If you've ever seen them mate, she goes back and forth in the front. It didn't track onto her, even though her face was recognizable. If you look at this previous frame, you can see her face is in the scene, yet it did not track onto her face because that's not the one I selected. This camera is smart, the technology is fantastic, and it's able to recognize the individual that you want to focus on. And yeah, you can see in this frame as she walks past and wafts her tail into his face, he's snarling, he's angry, and the shot I'm able to get is the one that I'm after, which is the face of the male, the snarl, and the aggression. Perfectly tracked and capable because of this Sony A9 Mark II and the autofocus system. Now again, yes, with effort, you can do this with any other camera, I'm sure, but it's the chance that you take. Yeah, with this camera, I get rid of the element of maybe I could get it wrong, because I'm almost 100% sure that I won't using the Sony A9II, and that's been a game changer for me. Like I said, I'm an experienced wildlife photographer. I've photographed many scenes. I've also messed up a lot of scenes. Much fewer so since I've been using this camera. Honestly, guys, I have kept so many more frames because of this camera system right here. What about this? This is a shot that many of us are faced with when you're photographing wildlife. A cat running towards you playing. These are lion cubs playing. It's made easy now because of the animal eye autofocus. And in fact, this was shot just so that you're aware with a Canon 200 to 400 f4 with a teleconverter built in. And you get an extender for the cameras, you can research that, but you're able to use third-party lenses from Nikon and also Canon on the Sony A9II body by getting an attachment between the lens and body. And just to show that you are able to do that. And so, you know, if you can't invest in all the Sony glass, then there are other options for you. But that said, it's always going to be better Sony on Sony, and that's kind of what you want to achieve or what you want to aim for. And if you look at the shot, made easy, animal eye autofocus, immediately recognized the eye, a cub running me at pace, towards me at pace, and tracked beautifully in the end. Now this is an interesting one, and I want you to have a look at this photograph because it's not as easy as what you think. And actually tracking that eye, actively tracking the eye is impossible on a DSLR. That eye is beyond the reach of the focal points of a DSLR. So you would have to use something like back button focus to be able to lock onto the eye, let go, recompose and shoot, but not on the fact on this Sony A9II and any of the other Sony cameras. It's the fact that your entire frame is active. You can move your focal point to any corner in your frame and get the shot. And I wanted to include this in here because in wildlife photography, I'm able to achieve compositions like this and still actively track the eye. Should the leopard move its head a little bit forward or a little bit back, my camera is on point. It is focusing on the eye, and it allows me to do extreme compositions like this and get great results. And that is important. Think about perhaps there's a case where you have a beautiful East Africa or Masai Mara scene where big grassland and one small animal and a beautiful big sky. Traditionally, again, it's difficult to track, especially if that animal is moving on a DSLR or many other camera systems. But on the Sony, I'm able to move my focal point onto the extreme corner of the frame and still track the animal coming towards me and get a beautiful photograph, the kind of photograph that I am after. And it's important to note that, guys, I wanted to show that to you, just so that you can see how versatile this is and just what you're able to achieve with this autofocus system. Now look at this. These are wild dogs. If you've ever photographed African wild dogs, they are a difficult subject. They are fast, they are active, and they move in directions that you just cannot predict. They move left to right and all over the show. But once again, I was able to get the shot that I wanted because the eyes were being tracked. So even as this dog pulled this carcass beyond the traditional focus points of a DSLR, my Sony A9II kept hold of the eyes actively in low light. This is at 5:30 in the morning, high ISO, and my autofocus performance was still on point, keeping track of the eyes and making sure that I get the result and the photograph that I wanted. Now again, in this frame, you can see much like the jaguar behind the tree, this tiger walked up to the tree. For the most part, only a bit of the tiger was exposed, and even as she came up to the tree itself, only one eye exposed. So just to show you do not need two eyes for animal eye autofocus to function. Just that one eye, and you've seen it in the lion Atomus footage, even the lion from the side, it's able to look at the side of the eye and track the side of the eye instead of both eyes. So that is performance, guys. On point, sharp. This image was taken at 6400 ISO, 6400 ISO. No loss in autofocus performance, no loss in sharpness, okay? And with that said, the A9 Mark II is incredible in low light. Beautiful photographs. I've shot print-worthy photos at 16,000 ISO, no problem at all. And even beyond that if you really want. But the eye is being tracked, and that to me is the most important part. Now, also what you'll find often is that you face not necessarily with a physical obstruction, but with something like dust, okay? Now, dust or maybe a dense layer of mist on an early morning safari, and again, that can pose problems for your camera and the autofocus system. Your camera wants to see contrast, it enjoys a contrasted line, and it doesn't like to have nothing to focus on. But I have found that this camera is very effective, even in difficult situations like that. And if you look at this shot, this is a lioness in incredibly dense dust. It was a dust storm in Wangi that blew up and basically made this shot very difficult for my guests and I. And in fact, sadly, most of my guests didn't get the shot because the dust was just too intense. Their cameras didn't track on the lioness. You can see her posture. The ears are flattened. She's closing her eyes. She's walking into the storm looking for cover. It just came out of nowhere. The wind picked up and it was late dry season. There was a lot of fine dust on the ground, and because of that, the dust just rose up like a cloud. Yet my Sony tracked the lioness perfectly, and I was so impressed. I love this photograph. It's something that you don't often get. You know, whenever I can add elements to a frame, rain, wind, dust, hail, whatever it is, that makes my photograph more interesting, and I don't want to miss that shot. I don't want to, because it's few and far that you get an opportunity like that. And as shown here, I was able to get it right. And to a lesser degree, this photograph, also dust, taken with a 400 f2.8 in minor pools. Also a dusty scene, the lions were engaging, they were fighting, a male and female, and this is the female backing away from the male, walking around him now. Dust in the air, cuts through the dust, and focuses on my cat. Now that is important, that is performance that I really want. And I'm very happy for that photograph. So I hope that's made it clear, guys. The ability to change and alternate. Now, that's important because for the most part on a DSLR, what you would have done is you would have probably focused on, you would have had your focus setting set, and that would have been all around the way that you shoot most of the cameras, and even on another system. But for me, the Sony A9II, the autofocus system, when understood, can be used in a versatile manner. I'm able to see the scene and adapt my focus system to match the scene at hand. And the two scenes, focus modes that have made the most sense to me are the ones I've explained here: wide and tracking, flexible spot, either small or medium. And that is important because I am now able to see the scene and decide which focus mode is going to get me closer to capturing the scene that I want to have. And that is something that is not customizable on many camera systems. And the best thing about the Sony A9II and any of these Sony cameras is each button on this camera can be customized to suit your needs. And so I've got it at the touch of a button. I can switch between modes and sensitivity and get the photograph that I'm after. And that is very, very special. Now, something that I don't photograph enough, birds. It's a difficult subject. And for the most part, everyone kind of struggles to get a sharp and in focus bird photograph. Let me tell you, my Sony A9II has made that easier for me. the speed of the lenses with the linear autofocus technology, coupled with the autofocus system in this Sony A9II, it has helped me to get the shots that I want in birds. I don't photograph birds enough, but I tell you what, over the last year since being with Sony, I've done that in bucket loads. And what I want you to do is look at this next Atomos footage. It's short, okay, but it will show you a roller in flight as it takes off, and how those autofocus points track the bird even as it flies away, sharp and in focus. I'll show it to you twice because it's not the longest clip, but I really want you to see this. So look at this. Autofocus point working. That is in focus. Watch this again, guys. You can see it's sharp and in focus, very low light. Watch it again. You will see there it goes, taking off, and the autofocus point's working. Now, what you need to note in that file is the following. I didn't have to keep my focus point on the bird, searching for it, trying to keep it in frame. All I had to do is press the back button, compose, and my camera did the tracking, literally does the tracking for me. And it allows me to get the shot that I want. I'll show it to you again because I think it's that cool. Understand, my camera is tracking for me. I use back button autofocus, so all I need to do, get the bird in frame, right? So get the bird in frame, back button, and shoot. And my camera then does the tracking for me. Look at this. Back button on, shoot. As soon as it flies, and I get the shots that I'm after. Simple as that. That is performance, and that allows me to get shots that previously I just struggled to get, or now it's just made so much easier. And if I get into the bird stuff, look at this. This is a black-collared hawk in the Pantanal coming down. I will admit it was a baited scene, so there was a small piranha in the water that we threw out for the bird. It's a place where they've done this for the last 20 years or so, and just to disclaim that, but still I did it for the purposes of just to see how this autofocus system works. And if you look at that, the bird coming in, I tracked it from its perch all the way into this scene in the area where it matters. That's it coming off of the water with the fish in its talons. And then this frame here, final frame that I love, just the water coming off the back, bird sharp and in focus, not a frame missed. Okay, this is shot pretty full frame with a 400 f2.8, not cropped, and it just works, guys, unbelievably well, to the point where even the eye of a bird will be tracked and sharp and in focus. So yes, it's not something that Sony claims, and again, I've found this just in my photography, but I do believe that it really works on the eyes of a bird and the head of a bird. It recognizes that, and it's able to track it quite effectively. This was taken not too long after taking the photograph of the hawk. This is a ringed kingfisher that came down to also take bait off the water. Now, for those who photograph kingfishers, these things are fast, incredibly fast, okay? Yet, this autofocus system allows me to track effectively even the kingfisher coming off and taking something off of the water at pace. Look at that, water droplets flying everywhere, but the bird is sharp, the bird is in focus, and I don't even have a photograph of a kingfisher. In all my years of taking photos like this in action, taking a fish. First time I tried with this camera, I was able to get it sharp, and that says a lot, guys. It really does, and it's something that gets me excited. These are macaws flying across a sinkhole. More difficult than what you think. I've put this in here for two reasons. One is the fact that it's a bird, it's sharp, and it's in focus. But it gives me the opportunity to photograph these scenes now effortlessly. And the other thing to note is that the dynamic range of this camera. There's sunlight coming through on the wings. Look at the color in the wings. Look at the shadows on the bird, and look at that dark background. Everything beautifully balanced, color retained, detail retained. And so just such an effective camera, something that completely blew my mind. Able to get shots like this, color, contrast, tonal range, sharpness, autofocus. It's got it all, and it gives you the best chance of getting special, incredible photographs of wildlife in all your favorite areas. And once again, here's a tawny eagle taking flight. Beautiful bird of prey, and I was ready for the scene. This was shot in wide focus modes. Most of the birds, I'll tell you, just so that you're aware, most of my bird shots are taken in wide focus mode. They're expandable, the tracking mode absolutely will work, but I just found that if it's a clean scene and my bird is perfectly exposed and seen and visible, I'm able to use the wide focus mode, and it just locks onto that bird like nobody's business, exactly like you saw in the roller sequence. It was sharp and in focus and tracked it all the way through. Now the same with this tawny eagle taking off and in flight. It again tracked the bird effectively, and even here where you can see the bird now in flight flying overhead, I just kept going, brr, brr, shooting. Even as the bird went overhead, I was able to track it and get it sharp and get it in focus. To me, that is performance. That is what I want from this camera. Here's a roller in action. We looked at a roller earlier, and you can see this lilac-breasted roller, beautiful, coming down to grab an insect sitting in the grass. I think it was a grasshopper. But the important thing is, from the moment it took off from its perch, grabbed the grasshopper and flew away, I got every single photograph in focus, sharp, no questions asked. This is the takeoff scene, and you can see here, wings open, just ready for action, wide focus mode, back button down, and as long as you, this is the important part, as long as you can keep the bird in frame, that's all you need to do. The focus will work for you, and the focus will track that bird and get you the shot ultimately. And that to me is the kind of performance that I want to get from a camera system. Now, I hope this has made sense to you. This camera here, guys, I cannot vouch for this camera enough. This is not because I'm told to do so. I really believe in this camera. I will not use a piece of equipment just because I'm said to do so, okay? I use stuff that gets me the result, that produces an image that I'm proud of, and I don't photograph that much anymore. You know, as a safari guide, I've traveled extensively. I have a huge library of images. So the time that I do pick up my camera, and when I do want to photograph something, I want it to work. I want to get a result. And that's what this does for me. A result like almost without fail. Even sitting here thinking about a time when I really missed out on the autofocus, I can't even think of it, because this thing is true, it's reliable, and just for me, the Sony A9 Mark II is the way to go for action and movement and autofocus capabilities. And I want to end off with a couple of last images. Now, you might laugh at this, but there's a few animals outside of mammals like lions and leopards and birds, okay, that I've been able to photograph, and it works quite effectively. And lizards, funny enough, I love iguanas, I love lizards, I love snakes, and this iguana was just beautiful. The tone, there was light dappled shade, the undergrowth, the leaves, the tone of the background, the iguana, everything was beautiful. But this thing was scared and it was running away from us. So funny enough, my Sony A9II locked onto the eyes of the iguana. I was as surprised as you probably are listening to this. And I wish I had an Atomos attached so that I could actually show you, which will be something for the future. But it actually locked into the eyes of the iguana and tracked the head and the eyes of the iguana. And it, gave me a beautiful result in the end, sharp and in focus. And much the same as this little character. This is a blue-headed tree agama captured in the Kruger National Park. They're quick, they'll sit like this, bob their head up, and then run a few meters and stop again. And even in the running and even in the stopping, the eyes of this lizard was tracked. How is that even possible? I asked myself, but I was happy to have that. I was happy to see that the eyes were tracked and that they were sharp and in focus. And with that, I'll end, guys. Just to conclude, for me, wildlife photography, as I told you, it's about the special moments. Most cameras can capture an ordinary moment, animals just merely walking or doing their thing, going about their day, no problem. But the real special results come from usually difficult lighting situations, low light, and use of an extender, maybe something like an action sequence of something running, chasing, being chased, going up a tree, jumping across the stream. Those are the moments that I really want to try and capture, that I really want to make the most of. Yes, I'm sure you agree. And in those moments, I don't want to mess it up. I want something that I can trust, that I can rely on, that I know will get me the result that I want. And for me, 100%, it's been this camera right here, the Sony A9 Mark II. And I cannot vouch for this camera enough. I really want you guys to try it. If you don't have one, go loan one. If you're thinking of getting one, just do it, jump in and get it. The lenses I tend to use the most are the 400 and 600, the Sony f400 2.8, 600 f4 G Master lenses. Those lenses coupled with this, it is deadly. It is so accurate, and just such a joy to shoot with. And so ending off, that'll be it for me. You know, I want something to perform, and I want something to get me the shot when it most matters. And I'm able to do that with the Sony A9 Mark II. It enables me to get photographs I was not able to get 15 years before this. So please guys, if this is something that has made sense to you, and hopefully it's made an impact on the way that you think about camera systems or the way that you'll use your Sony A9 II into the future, then I thank you for the time and thank you for watching and for listening. I truly believe in this camera, and I have no doubt that it will not let me down, and that Sony has created something truly special, innovating and groundbreaking. So thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. My name is Marlon Du Toit, and I look forward to educating you again in the future and to our next session together. Thank you so much. Goodbye.